WNTK News Time is 8:46. You're listening to Live and Local in the Morning. I am your host, Ben Sarro, just moving right along, getting back into the political swing of things for today. We're hit with all these candidates that are coming out. They're Republicans or Democrats. There are other people involved in party politics in the state of New Hampshire and around the country. One of the parties that has been making some inroads and seems to be getting more and more attention as time goes on is the Libertarian Party. They are fielding a U.S. Senate candidate, and that is somebody very familiar to a lot of the people who've been listening to WNTK for quite some time. It'll be Gardner Goldsmith. Gardner, good morning.
Hi, Ben. How are you?
I am fantastic. Gardner, how does it feel to be on the other side of the WNTK mic?
Well, it's quite interesting, and thanks a lot for the invitation to join you on the show, and hello to everybody out there to whom I used to speak when I was in the studio myself. I had many great times over there, and I might have even played a little bit of that music that you just played in excess. That was good to hear again. Don't change, they say, right? Don't
change. No matter what you do, don't change. But you talk about don't change, but we are seeing a change in the electorate. Libertarianism, I think, is a growing movement. I think that's fair to say. And I find that this crazy thing happens with the Republicans. They say, I really like what the Libertarians have to say, and I share many views for them. I just can't vote for them. How do you make that? How do you close that gap and get more people to come over to the Libertarian side?
Well, that's absolutely right. It's a really astute observation, Ben. And my approach to the Senate campaign, and if people are interested, they can find out more of what we're doing. It's Gard4 and Senate, Gard4Senate.com, and we have videos available and so on. Essentially, what I've recognized has been lacking from the Republican Party for quite a while, and I think a lot of disenfranchised Republicans probably feel the same way, and some disenfranchised Democrats might feel this way about their party as well, is they don't work to try to get more people to understand fundamental principles. Mm-hmm. So when I was asked to potentially be a candidate, I said, look, I hate political races. I just can't stand this stuff. It literally makes me feel physically ill thinking about, getting signatures for petitions and all these things, and just approaching people to say, oh, please, sir, can you help us? But I thought, if we can frame this and talk to people about principles of free markets and leaving our neighbor alone and what the rules of the Constitution of the United States actually are, maybe it'll be worthwhile. We know that we're an outside party, and we're not going to get the same sort of attention or the same sort of votes that another party will. But if we can get into a race and people are listening to the people in the race, if the voters are listening, then we can express some of these ideas. So I think this, for me, is an opportunity to explain to people what the libertarian principles are, and if they're interested and they recognize principle within themselves, they might say, you know what? My party doesn't stand for those things anymore.
Mm-hmm. Gardner Goldsmith is on the WNTK Newsline. He seeks the U.S., or I guess he is the U.S. Senate. I don't know how to say. You are the candidate on the Libertarian Party. There's no primary here, right?
Right. There's not going to be a primary for the Libertarian Party. The problem is that a number of years ago, the Libertarians fielded a candidate who was a great candidate. Her name was Miriam Luce in the state of New Hampshire. She ran for governor, and she got 3% of the vote. And there have been other candidates like John Lewicki, who ran for U.S. Congress, who got 3% of the vote. And certain people who were in certain political parties, starting with the G and an O and a P, they were very worried that percentage would take away from their opportunity to beat the Democrats. They worked very hard in the state to raise the threshold for the Libertarians to be able to get on the ballot. So what we're hoping is that people will go to the Gard4Senate website. We really would love to get volunteers in the Upper Valley and the New London area. They can contact us. They can even email me at Gard4Senate@gmail.com. And we need to get 3,000 signatures now because they changed the law. Even though we had to pay $100 to be able to file for the race,
they bumped it up.
We actually can't get on the ballot unless we get 3,000 signatures by the end of July.
you should be able to get that. And you know, I know the GOP, and you allude to this. The GOP, they shake in their boots, the Libertarians, so they're going to take votes away. But, you know, there's a number of Democrats out there who say, wait a minute. I don't want you to regulate my wood stove, as we've seen. I don't necessarily think that I should have to pay money for people who don't want to work. You know, those Democrats do exist, and they're going to, libertarianism is going to appeal to them also because of those social issues that tend to be a little less important to libertarians.
That's an awesome observation. Absolutely right. Don't change in excess, my friend. You're absolutely right, and it's good to see that you observe these things because for me, as you know, when I worked on the radio, I would recognize that both the Democrats and the Republicans were straying from a lot of the principles that I found were often core to some of their original concepts, or at least when I was growing up, things I recognized. For example, Democrats were often talking about privacy. And when George Bush was president, they correctly criticized President Bush for invading people's phone records, the Verizon cell phone scandal. Absolutely right, a complete destruction of the Fourth Amendment. And yet, people like Jeanne Shaheen support things, and I'm not just picking her to be political or whatever, but this is a matter of principle. This woman supported a bill that invades people's medical rights every day.
Right.
It invades the Fourth Amendment. It takes their medical records. On the Republican side, you've got Scott Brown. He voted for the NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act, which allows the president to hold people indefinitely, and there has been no declaration of war. The only thing Congress can do, if they want the president to lead the troops, is either declare war, or there's another provision called letters of marque and reprisal. And I'm not even a senator. I'm just a dude who listens to punk rock in my car, and yet I've got to be the guy to remind these people of what the actual document says that gave them their seats in power. I mean, it's crazy,
Yeah, Gardner Goldsmith is on the WNTK News Line. He's a Libertarian candidate for U.S. Senate. Gardner, let me ask you some questions about you on a personal level. What makes you qualified to be a U.S. Senator? You just gave us one good excuse just a second ago.
Well, yeah, and the funny thing is I'm an anarchist, right? I want no government at all. On principle, it's impossible to support the very concept of government. Supposedly, you have a right to be left alone. You have a right to your property. And supposedly, government is formed to protect your property from encroachments by others. That's the concept of negative reciprocity, and we talk about it in our videos on the website. And essentially, I'm here to discuss the principles behind things so that people feel this resonance and they understand how far the politicians have strayed from these principles. But government itself, the only way government can exist, the only way the state in its generic form can exist, is by encroaching on your property and threatening you if you don't pay your taxes. So it's a machinery of theft in the first place, and its excuse is that it's supposed to protect your property from theft. So there's a tautology there. And hopefully Jeanne Shaheen, as a teacher, will remember what that word was, but she's been in politics so long, I doubt it. But for me, if the only requirement anybody needs is if they would conform to the United States Constitution,
Sure.
And hopefully, if we were to get into a debate, which is one of the main reasons we have to try to get on the ballot, if we get into the debate, I will bring up these points. I will mention these areas. I will tell them, for example, your listeners, they might find this interesting. There's no provision in the United States Constitution that gives the federal government the power to control immigration, except in the original 13 states up until 1808. And it was all part of the Missouri Compromise and the territories that were going to enter as slave state, free state, slave state, free state. When Texas entered the Union in the 1860s, they had a provision for a Bureau of Immigration in their own constitution in the state. And I know that I'm, adding more information that is specific and not really general to your question. But these are the sorts of things that if we can get a libertarian into the debate, if we can talk about how there isn't a declaration of war, how the Fourth Amendment's being destroyed, how the NDAA allows people to be apprehended, how the which is unconstitutional, how the so-called war on drugs has spent over $1 trillion, and as the law enforcement against prohibition people say, the percentage of people on hard drugs is no different than when Nixon started the Drug Enforcement Agency back in the 70s. It's been destructive to our rights. They have not amended the Constitution. It's not in the federal government government's power. All these things, it would be great if we could just get in there and people could hear it. And they often heard Ron Paul, and they would say, like college students would say, hey, wait a minute. That guy's actually not giving me a bunch of crap on the stage.
Right.
He's telling the truth,
Yeah, and Ron Paul certainly attracted a lot of enthusiasts here in New Hampshire. You think that you build off of that. Gardner, I'm just about out of time. Once again, the website is Gard4Senate.com. Help Gardner get on the ballot. Go there. You'll see all the petitions. Sign up. Gardner, I want to thank you for being on WNTK and WVR today, and I'll be reaching out to you soon to get you back on. I'll give you a platform here.
That'll be great. Thanks so much, man.
All right, man. Thank you very much. WNTK News Time is